Hyunwoo Kim stared at the massive screen in the Earth Defense Command Center. Red dots filled the display like angry stars. Each dot was a ship. Each ship carried death for his world. "How many?" he asked the young officer beside him. 3,012 ships, sir," the officer said. His voice shook. "They're still coming through the outer system." Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment. 3,000 ships. The entire human fleet had only 800 vessels. Even with all the new weapons they had built, it would not be enough. The Draconian Armada had destroyed 17 worlds already. Their ships looked like giant metal dragons with wings that could slice through space itself. No one had ever beaten them in battle. No one had even slowed them down. "Sir, we're getting a message from Luna Research Station," another officer called out. "Put Dr. Park through," Hyunwoo said. The screen changed to show Yoonji Park. She sat in her lab on the moon, surrounded by alien technology they had captured from other battles. Her face was pale but determined. "Hyunwoo, I've been listening to their communications," she said. "It's worse than we thought. They don't just want to conquer us. They want to harvest our entire planet." "Harvest?" Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. "They're calling us soft shells. They think we're nothing more than animals. They plan to take every living thing on Earth and use it for their empire. The trees, the oceans, even the bacteria in the soil. They want it all." Hyunwoo looked back at the screen showing the approaching fleet. The red dots had grown larger. They were moving fast, much faster than human ships could travel. "How long do we have?" he asked. 18 hours until they reach Mars orbit. Maybe 24 hours until they're here. 24 hours. Hyunwoo had been preparing for this day for 3 years, ever since they first learned about the Draconian Empire. But no amount of preparation felt like enough now. "Thank you, Yoonji. Keep monitoring their signals. Let me know if anything changes." The screen went dark. Hyunwoo turned to face his command team. 30 of Earth's best military minds looked back at him. Some were old veterans who had fought in the resource wars. Others were young geniuses who understood technology better than anyone alive. "You all heard Dr. Park," he said. "We have 1 day to save our world. What's our status?" General Martinez stood up first. "All orbital defense platforms are online. We have 600 laser cannons and 400 missile launchers positioned around Earth. The moon base has another 200 weapons ready." "Our fleet?" Hyunwoo asked. Captain Ji-hoon Lee stepped forward. He was young for a ship captain, only 32, but he had never lost a battle. 800 ships ready for combat, sir. We've split them into 4 groups. I'll lead the first wave." "The evacuation ships?" "All civilian vessels are loaded and ready to jump to the outer colonies," another officer reported. "We can save maybe 10 million people if the worst happens. 10 million out of 12 billion. Hyunwoo tried not to think about those numbers. "What about the new weapons?" he asked. Dr. Kim Min-ho, their chief scientist, stood up. He looked tired. He had not slept in 3 days. "The plasma torpedoes are ready. We've built 500 of them. They might be able to punch through draconian shields. Maybe. We've never tested them against real draconian armor. We're working with guesses and hope." Hope. That seemed to be all they had left. The next 18 hours passed like a nightmare. Reports came in from the outer system as the Draconian fleet moved closer. Their ships were even bigger than the satellites had shown. The largest ones were 20 kilometers long, floating cities of death and destruction. Hyunwoo barely left the command center. He ate protein bars and drank coffee while watching the enemy approach. He spoke with world leaders, giving them updates they did not want to hear. He reviewed battle plans that seemed more like elaborate ways to die with honor. "Sir, they're passing Mars now," an officer called out. On the main screen, the red dots had arranged themselves into a perfect formation. It looked like a spear aimed at Earth's heart. At the tip flew the biggest ship of all, a massive creature of metal and hate that was 30 kilometers from nose to tail. "That's their flagship," Yoonji's voice came through the speakers. She was still on the moon, still monitoring their signals. "The ship is called World Eater in their language. Their leader is aboard." "Can we target it specifically?" Ji-hoon asked. "It's protected by 50 smaller ships," Hyunwoo said, studying the formation. "We'd have to fight through all of them first." "Then that's what we'll do," Ji-hoon said simply. Hyun-woo looked at the young captain. Ji-hoon's confidence never wavered, even now. Perhaps that was what made him such a good leader. His crew believed in him because he believed in victory, even when victory seemed impossible. All ships, prepare for combat, Hyun-woo ordered. This is not just about Earth. This is about every human who will ever be born. This is about the right to exist in this universe. Make them remember that humans do not go quietly into the dark. The fleet began to move. 800 human ships rose from Earth orbit and headed toward the asteroid belt where they would meet the enemy. They looked so small compared to the Draconian Armada, like children's toys floating in an ocean. "Sir, something's happening," the sensor officer said suddenly. Hyun-woo turned to look at the display. The red dots had stopped moving. The entire Draconian fleet had come to a halt just beyond the asteroid belt. "Are they changing formation?" he asked. "No, sir, they're just stopped." For 5 minutes, nothing happened. The Draconian fleet hung motionless in space while the human fleet continued toward them. Hyun-woo felt sweat on his forehead. This was not normal. The Draconians never hesitated. They never stopped their advance once they decided to attack a world. "Yoon-ji, are you picking up any communications?" he asked. "Nothing, Hyun-woo. Complete radio silence. It's like they all just turned off their transmitters at the same time." Then the impossible happened. One by one, the red dots on the screen began to disappear. Not moving away, not being destroyed, just vanishing completely. The flagship went first, winking out of existence like someone had turned off a light. Then the ships around it started to fade away. "What's happening to our sensors?" Hyun-woo demanded. "Sensors are fine, sir," the officer replied, his voice confused. "The ships are just gone." Within 10 minutes, the entire Draconian Armada had vanished. 3,000 ships that had been preparing to destroy Earth simply ceased to exist. The space where they had been was empty, showing only distant stars and floating rocks. The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the empty display, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. "Ji-hoon, take your scouts and investigate that area," Hyun-woo finally ordered. "I want to know what happened to those ships." "Yes, sir. Moving to investigate." But even as the human ships raced toward the spot where the Draconians had disappeared, Hyun-woo knew they would find nothing. Somehow, impossibly, the greatest threat humanity had ever faced had simply vanished into empty space. The question was, why? 3 months had passed since the Draconian Armada disappeared. Hyun-woo Kim still woke up every morning expecting to see enemy ships on his screens. But space remained empty, silent, and full of questions no one could answer. The search teams had found nothing. Ji-hoon Lee had taken his best ships to scan every piece of space where the Draconians had vanished. They found asteroid dust, cosmic radiation, and empty darkness. No metal fragments, no energy signatures, no trace that 3,000 warships had ever existed in that spot. "It doesn't make sense," Hyun-woo muttered, staring at the daily reports. "Ships don't just disappear." His assistant knocked on his office door. "Sir, we have another report from the seismic monitoring stations." Hyun-woo looked up. For the past month, strange vibrations had been detected all over Earth. They started small, barely noticeable tremors that happened at the same time each day. But they were getting stronger. "What does Dr. Choi say about them?" "She wants to brief you personally, sir. She says it's urgent." So young Choi was the best military engineer on Earth. If she said something was urgent, Hyun-woo listened. "Send her in." So Young entered carrying a tablet full of data. She looked tired and worried. "Hyun-woo, we need to talk about these vibrations. They're not natural. Earthquakes happen all the time." "Not like this." She showed him a chart on her tablet. "Look at this pattern. The vibrations happen every day at exactly 14:32 Greenwich Mean Time. They last for exactly 47 minutes. They happen in the same sequence every time." Hyun-woo studied the chart. The pattern did look strange. Could it be machinery? That's what I thought at first. But the source is too deep. These vibrations are coming from at least 50 kilometers underground. Some of them go even deeper than that. Nuclear tests? No radioactivity, no heat signatures, just these regular pulses that seem to follow a mathematical pattern. So Young switched to another screen. I think someone is trying to communicate. The idea sent a chill down Hyunwoo's spine. Communicate with who? That's what we need to find out. While So Young worked on the vibration mystery, strange discoveries were happening in other parts of the world. Tae-min Yoon, an archaeologist working with the Deep Ocean Research Team, was the first to find something truly impossible. Tae-min had been studying the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench when his submersible's metal detector went crazy. The readings showed massive amounts of metal embedded in the trench walls, not scattered pieces, but organized structures. Dr. Park, you need to see this, Tae-min said into his radio. Yoonji Park had joined the ocean research team after the Draconian disappearance, hoping to find answers anywhere she could. What did you find? Yoonji's voice crackled through the water. Metal structures. Big ones. They're built into the rock itself, like they've been here for millions of years. That was impossible. Humans had only been using metal for a few thousand years. There were no ancient civilizations with advanced technology. At least that's what everyone believed until now. When they brought up samples of the metal, Yoonji's face went pale. She ran the same tests 3 times to make sure. Tae-min, this metal is identical to Draconian ship armor. That's impossible. The Draconians have never been to Earth before. I know it's impossible, but the molecular structure is exactly the same. Same alloys, same crystalline patterns, everything. The discovery in the ocean was just the beginning. Within days, similar metal structures were found under the Sahara Desert, beneath the Amazon rainforest, and under the ice in Antarctica. Everywhere they looked, they found the same thing. Ancient metal buried deep in the earth. Metal that matched Draconian technology perfectly. Dr. Narration, a quantum physicist who had been studying the vibration patterns, made the next breakthrough. She was working late in her lab when she noticed something strange about the timing of the underground pulses. The frequency is shifting, she told her research partner. Not random shifts, controlled ones. What kind of control? Dimensional frequency control. Someone is manipulating space-time itself. Nari had spent years studying theoretical physics. She knew about dimensions beyond the 3 humans could see. She had written papers about folding space and bending time, but this was the first time she had seen evidence that someone was actually doing it. Could this explain what happened to the Draconian fleet? She wondered aloud. Her computers ran calculations all night. When she saw the results in the morning, she immediately called Hyun-woo. The Draconians didn't leave Earth's solar system, she told him. They were pulled somewhere else. Somewhere outside normal space. Pulled by what? Something with technology far beyond anything we've ever seen. Something that can grab 3,000 ships and move them to another dimension. Hyun-woo felt a headache building behind his eyes. First alien ships that disappeared into nothing, then ancient metal that shouldn't exist. Now someone was telling him that Earth was being manipulated by beings with impossible technology. Nari, I need you to work with So Young and her team. Figure out where these vibrations are coming from. Already on it. We're using the seismic data to map the underground structures. What we're finding is incredible. The map they created showed a network of metallic structures that spanned the entire planet. They were connected by tunnels that ran deeper than humans had ever drilled. The whole system was still active, drawing power from somewhere and sending signals into space. It's like Earth itself is a giant machine, So Young explained to the emergency meeting of world leaders, and we never knew it. The President of the Americas stared at the display. How long has this been here? Based on the geological layers, at least 65 million years, maybe longer. That's when the dinosaurs died out, someone pointed. Out Yoonji spoke up from her position at the conference table. What if they didn't just die out? What if something removed them? The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. If Earth had been under observation for millions of years, if something had been controlling events on the planet, then humanity might not be as alone as they thought. There's something else, Tae-min added quietly. The ocean structures aren't just metal. We found chambers, big ones, and some of them have things inside. What kind of things? Hyun-woo asked. Things that look like sleeping pods. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Not only was Earth an ancient machine, but that machine had passengers, beings that had been sleeping beneath the surface, while humanity grew and developed above. Are they alive? the European Union representative asked. The pods are still powered, Taemin said. Life support systems are running. Whatever's inside them has been sleeping for a very long time. Nari pulled up another display. The signal patterns suggest the sleepers are connected to the vibration network. They might be the ones sending the messages. Messages to who? That's what we need to find out. As the meeting broke up, Hyunwoo found himself staring out the window at the city below. Millions of people went about their daily lives, not knowing that their world was far stranger than they had ever imagined. Ancient beings slept beneath their feet. Technology beyond human understanding monitored their every move. The Draconian Armada had come to destroy Earth, but something had stopped them, something that had been waiting and watching for millions of years. The question that kept Hyunwoo awake at night was simple, but terrifying. What did these ancient watchers want with humanity? And more importantly, what would happen when they finally woke up? Yoonji Park had not slept for 36 hours. Her eyes burned as she stared at the computer screen, but she could not stop working. The signals from underground were becoming clearer, and what they were saying changed everything. It's not random, she muttered to herself for the 100th time. It's a language. The underground vibrations that So Young had discovered were not just mechanical pulses. They were messages, complex, detailed messages that followed mathematical rules and patterns. After weeks of analysis, Yoonji had finally begun to understand what they meant. The first word she translated was monitoring. The second was species. The third made her hands shake as she typed it into her report. Humans. Her phone rang. It was Hyunwoo calling from the command center. Yoonji, we need you here immediately. Something's happening at the Antarctic site. 20 minutes later, Yoonji was on a military transport heading south. Through the window, she could see other aircraft flying in the same direction. The whole world was watching what happened next. The Antarctic excavation site looked like something from a science fiction movie. Giant heaters had melted away tons of ice to reveal metal structures that gleamed in the sunlight. Taemin Yoon stood at the entrance to the main tunnel, wearing a thick winter coat and a worried expression. What's the situation? Hyunwoo asked as soon as he stepped off the transport. The vibration stopped an hour ago, Taemin said. All of them, all over the world. Complete silence. That's good, right? That's what we thought, until this happened. Taemin led them to the tunnel entrance. The metal walls were glowing with a soft blue light that had not been there before. Symbols appeared and disappeared on the surfaces like words on a computer screen. The whole complex is activating, So Young said, joining the group. She held a tablet showing energy readings. Power levels are increasing exponentially. Whatever's down there is waking up. Dong Hyun Bai, the chief engineer for the excavation project, emerged from the tunnel wearing a safety helmet and a look of amazement. You have to see what we found down there. The group followed him into the glowing tunnel. The walls hummed with energy, and the air felt different, charged with electricity that made their hair stand on end. After walking for 10 minutes, they reached a massive chamber that took their breath away. The room was enormous, easily the size of a football stadium. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. But what filled the chamber was even more incredible than its size. Thousands of cylindrical pods lined the walls, each one the size of a car and made from the same glowing metal as the tunnels. Most of the pods were dark and silent, but some pulsed with the same blue light as the walls. How many are there? Hyunwoo asked quietly. We've counted over 3,000 in this chamber alone, Dong Hyun said. And this is just one room. We've found at least 12 other chambers connected by tunnels. Yoonji approached one of the glowing pods. Through a transparent panel, she could see a figure inside. It was tall and thin, with pale skin and long limbs. Its face was beautiful in a way that seemed almost impossible, with features too perfect to be human. They're not human, she whispered. No, Taemin said, but they're not draconian either. These beings are something else entirely. As they explored the chamber, the blue glow grew brighter. Symbols flowed across the walls faster now, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then, without warning, one of the pods opened with a soft hissing sound. The being inside sat up slowly, like someone waking from a very long sleep. Its eyes opened and looked directly at the group of humans. When it spoke, The voice came from everywhere at once, echoing inside their minds rather than their ears. "The monitoring period is complete," it said. "The young species has achieved the threshold." Hyun-woo stepped forward, trying to look brave despite his racing heart. "Who are you? What is this place?" The being stood up with fluid grace. It was nearly 8 feet tall, dressed in clothing that seemed to be made from light itself. When it moved, the air around it shimmered like heat waves. "I am a guardian," it said. "We are the architects of this galactic sector. We have been observing your species since you first began to use tools." "Observing us? Why?" "To determine if you were worthy of survival. Your galaxy has seen many species rise and fall. Most destroy themselves or others before they achieve wisdom. We monitor them to see which ones might become something greater." Narration had arrived with the second group of researchers. She pushed forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "You've been watching us for millions of years? Your world was prepared long before your species evolved. We seeded it with the necessary elements for life to flourish. We guided evolution when necessary. We protected you from threats you never knew existed." The Guardian gestured to the walls around them. "This facility is one of many across your planet. We built them to monitor your development and to test your reactions to various challenges." "Tests?" Yoonji asked. "What kind of tests?" "Climate changes, asteroid impacts, the rise and fall of various species. Each event was designed to push evolution in specific directions. We wanted to see if your species would develop intelligence, empathy, and the ability to work together." Hyun-woo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Antarctic cold. "The dinosaurs. You killed the dinosaurs. We removed them when they showed no potential for advancement. Reptilian intelligence develops differently than mammalian intelligence. We chose to give mammals their opportunity." The casual way the Guardian spoke about extinction made everyone uncomfortable. This being was talking about wiping out entire species like a farmer pulling weeds from a garden. "What about the Draconians?" So-young asked. "What happened to their fleet?" For the first time, the Guardian showed something that might have been emotion. Its perfect features shifted slightly, showing what looked like disappointment. "The Draconians were one of our failures. A species that achieved space travel but never learned wisdom. They have conquered and destroyed dozens of worlds. When they approached your system with genocidal intent, they triggered our protection protocols." "Protection protocols?" "Your world is too valuable to lose. When a threat of sufficient magnitude approaches, our systems automatically defend it. The Draconian fleet was transported to a containment dimension where they cannot harm anyone." Nari's mind raced with the implications. "A prison dimension?" "A place where aggressive species can exist without threatening others. Some eventually learn from their isolation and are released. Others remain forever." The Guardian turned its attention back to Hyun-woo. "But you are here because your species has passed the final test. When faced with overwhelming odds, humanity chose to unite rather than fragment. You prepared to sacrifice yourselves to protect your world and each other. This is the wisdom we have been waiting to see." "What happens now?" Hyun-woo asked. "Now, you must choose. You can remain on this world and continue your natural development, or you can accept the responsibility that comes with advanced knowledge." "What responsibility?" The Guardian gestured to the chamber around them. "This facility contains technology that can reshape matter, manipulate time, and travel between dimensions. With it, you could become the new guardians of this galactic sector. You could monitor and protect developing species just as we have protected you." The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Hyun-woo looked around at his companions. They were scientists, soldiers, and explorers. But they were also human. Could humanity handle such enormous responsibility? "How long do we have to decide?" he asked. "As long as you need. We have waited millions of years for this moment. We can wait a little longer." But even as the Guardian spoke, other pods in the chamber began to glow and open. More beings emerged, each one ancient beyond human understanding, each one carrying knowledge that could transform civilization or destroy it. The choice that faced humanity was simple, but terrifying. Remain children, forever, or grow up and become gods. The Guardian moved through the chamber like flowing water, its perfect form gliding between the awakening pods. More Guardians emerged from their long sleep, each one tall and graceful, each one carrying the weight of millions of years in their ancient eyes. Narration found herself chosen as their primary communication link. The process was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The Guardian touched her forehead with one long finger, and suddenly her mind expanded beyond her body. She could feel the thoughts of beings who had watched galaxies form and die. Through her, the Guardian spoke to the assembled humans. "You wish to know what became of the Draconian Armada? We will show you." The chamber around them dissolved into darkness. Then images began to form in the air, solid and real, as if they were standing in space itself. They could see the Draconian fleet as it had been that day, 3,000 ships of metal and death approaching Earth with terrible purpose. "The Draconians are an old species," the Guardian explained through Nari's voice. "They achieved space travel 15,000 years ago. At first, they explored peacefully. They made contact with other species. They shared knowledge and resources. Thaois. Images showed beautiful cities on distant worlds, with different alien species working together. Draconian ships traded goods and ideas across star systems. It looked like a golden age of cooperation. "What changed them?" Yunji asked. "Fear," the Guardian replied. "They discovered that their star was dying. Their home world had perhaps 1,000 years before becoming uninhabitable. Instead of asking for help, they chose to take what they needed from others." The images shifted to show darker scenes. Draconian fleets attacking peaceful worlds, cities burning, entire populations enslaved or killed. What had once been a noble species became something monstrous. They convinced themselves that survival justified any action, the Guardian continued. They created a philosophy that declared their species superior to all others. They became what your people call genocidal. Hyun Woo watched the terrible scenes playing out before them. How many worlds did they destroy? 47 civilizations were completely eliminated. Hundreds of others were enslaved or scattered. The Draconians became the greatest threat this galaxy had seen in millions of years. Taemin stepped closer to the images. "Why didn't you stop them sooner?" "We were sleeping. Our monitoring systems tracked their progress, but we had entered our great rest believing that no new threats would emerge for thousands of years. By the time we began to awaken, they were already approaching your system." The images changed, to show Earth itself, blue and beautiful in the darkness of space. Then the Draconian fleet appeared, a swarm of metal insects descending on their world. "The moment they crossed into your system with genocidal intent, our protection protocols activated," the Guardian explained. "Your world was too precious to lose." So Young studied the images carefully. How does the containment dimension work? Space and time can be folded and manipulated by those who understand the fundamental forces of reality. We created a pocket dimension outside normal space-time. It exists parallel to your universe but cannot interact with it. The images shifted to show the moment of transport. 1 second, the Draconian fleet was preparing to attack Earth. The next second, reality bent around them like twisted metal. The ships were pulled into a tear in space that closed behind them, leaving empty vacuum where they had been. "What happens to them there?" Ji-hoon asked. He had been quiet until now, but the military implications fascinated him. Time moves differently in the containment dimension. What seems like minutes to us becomes years for those inside. They experience their imprisonment in real time, but accelerated. They have been in containment for 3 months in our time. For them, it has been over a century. The images showed the interior of the pocket dimension. It looked like empty space, but filled with the Draconian fleet floating motionless. The ships were intact but powerless, their crews trapped inside vessels that no longer responded to commands. "Are they still alive?" Yunji asked quietly. "Yes. The dimension provides basic life support. They cannot die, but they cannot leave. They cannot communicate with each other. Each ship exists in isolation." "That's torture," Dong-hyun said, looking disturbed. "It is justice," the Guardian replied through Nari's voice. "They chose to become destroyers of worlds. Now they experience the isolation and helplessness they imposed on others." The images changed again, showing the inside of one Draconian ship. The crew sat at their stations like statues, unable to move or speak. Their eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing. After decades of imprisonment, their minds had begun to break down. "Some adapt," the Guardian explained. They use the time to think about their actions and choices. They begin to understand the suffering they caused. These ones eventually find peace. And the others? The others cling to their hatred and arrogance. They refuse to learn. They remain trapped in their own anger until their minds collapse entirely. Hyunwoo felt sick watching the trapped beings. Even knowing what they had done, seeing them reduced to this was hard to bear. How many species have you imprisoned this way? Over the millions of years we have been active. 237. Species have been sent to containment dimensions, some for aggression like the Draconians, others for different crimes against galactic stability. Crimes? Species that create weapons that can destroy stars, species that attempt to manipulate time for selfish purposes, species that try to consume the life force of entire worlds. Each represents a threat that cannot be allowed to continue. The images showed brief glimpses of other imprisoned species, machines that had turned against their creators, energy beings that fed on the dreams of sleeping worlds, creatures that looked like living darkness, reaching out with tentacles that could drain the light from stars. What happens when they learn their lesson? Taemin asked. They are released and given a chance to start over. We provide them with a new world, far from any others they might threaten. Some become peaceful and wise, others repeat their mistakes and are imprisoned again. Have any of the Draconians shown signs of learning? So Young asked. The Guardian paused, and through Nari's connection they could feel something like sadness. A few. In their isolation, some have begun to question their beliefs. They remember the peaceful time before their star began to die. They wonder if there might have been another way. Could they be released? Perhaps. But that decision is no longer ours to make. The images faded, leaving the chamber in its soft blue glow. The humans looked at each other, trying to process what they had learned. What do you mean it's not your decision? Hyunwoo asked. The Guardian's form became more solid, more present. We are old and tired. We have watched over this galaxy for millions of years. We have seen species rise and fall, make the same mistakes over and over. It is time for us to rest. But if you rest, who will watch over things? That is why you are here. Humanity has shown the wisdom to unite in the face of danger. You have shown mercy even to your enemies. You have the potential to become the new guardians. The weight of responsibility settled on the room like a heavy blanket. They were being offered control over technologies that could imprison entire species, remake worlds, and judge which civilizations deserved to survive. If we accept, Nari said, her voice strange as she spoke both her own words and the Guardians, the fate of the Draconians becomes our responsibility. We would decide whether they have learned enough to be released. And we would decide what to do about future threats, Hyunwoo added. Yes, you would become judges of entire species. The responsibility is enormous, but so is the power to protect innocent worlds from those who would destroy them. As the humans stood in the ancient chamber, surrounded by beings older than their entire civilization, they faced the most important choice in human history. They could remain safe and ignorant, or accept a burden that would change them forever. The Draconians waited in their prison of empty space, their fate hanging in the balance of humanity's decision. The decision took 6 months. 6 months of debates in every government building on Earth. 6 months of sleepless nights for world leaders who had never imagined making choices that would affect entire star systems. 6 months of humanity learning what it meant to grow up as a species. Hyunwoo Kim found himself at the center of it all. The man who had prepared to defend Earth from the Draconian Armada was now helping to decide the fate of civilizations across the galaxy. The weight of it made him feel older than his 45 years. The vote is unanimous, he announced to the Assembly of World Leaders. Humanity accepts the responsibility of becoming guardians. The decision had not been easy. Many people argued that humans were too young, too flawed, too violent to judge other species. Others worried that the power would corrupt them, turning humanity into the same kind of tyrants they were meant to stop. But in the end, the choice came down to a simple truth. If humans did not accept the responsibility, who would? The ancient guardians were tired. They wanted to rest after millions of years of watching over the galaxy. Without someone to take their place, aggressive species like the Draconians would eventually destroy everything. The Antarctic facility had become humanity's training ground. So-Young Choi and Dong-Hyun Bae worked with Guardian technology every day, learning to operate systems that could reshape matter and bend space itself. The learning curve was steep, but humans proved surprisingly adaptable. The key is not to think of it as technology, So-Young explained to the newest group of trainees. It responds to intention as much as action. You have to want the right thing, not just know the right buttons to push. Tae Min-yoon became humanity's first archaeological guardian, tasked with studying the history of imprisoned species and determining which ones might be ready for release. His work took him into the containment dimensions themselves, protected by Guardian technology that let him observe without being detected. His first report on the Draconians was not encouraging. Most of them are still lost in hatred, he told the Guardian Council that had formed to oversee humanity's new role. They blame everyone but themselves for their imprisonment. They talk about revenge against Earth, against the Guardians, against the universe itself. But some are different? Yoonji asked. She had become humanity's expert on alien psychology, working to understand the minds of species that thought in ways completely unlike humans. About 300 individuals out of the entire Armada, Tae-min confirmed. They've used their time in isolation to think about their actions. Some have expressed what seems like genuine regret. Regret is a start, said the Guardian, who had first awakened. It rarely spoke now, letting humans make their own decisions. But regret alone is not enough. They must demonstrate understanding of why their actions were wrong. Narration had volunteered to be the primary interface between humans and Guardians. The process had changed her, made her something more than entirely human, but not quite Guardian, either. She could feel the thoughts of both species, helping to bridge the gap between human emotion and Guardian logic. The ones who show progress, she said, they've started to remember what their species was like before the fear took over. They talk about the peaceful times, the cooperation with other species. They wonder if there might have been alternatives to conquest. Could we try communicating with them? Hyunwoo asked. The ancient Guardian considered this. Dangerous. Communication might give them hope of manipulation rather than true change, but perhaps controlled contact with carefully selected individuals. The first attempt at communication was made with a Draconian engineer named Kethvar, who had shown the most progress toward understanding. Through the containment field, Nari was able to establish a limited mental connection. The experience was overwhelming. Decades of isolation had left the Draconian's mind fractured and desperate. But underneath the damage, she found something. Unexpected, genuine sorrow for the worlds his people had destroyed. I remember the blue world of the Kalari, the Draconian's thoughts whispered to her. We turned their oceans to steam. I helped design the weapons that killed their children. I told myself it was necessary. I told myself they were not real people, like us. What do you believe now? Nari asked gently. Now I know that I was a monster, but knowing does not undo what was done. The children are still dead. The blue world is still ash. The conversation lasted only minutes, but it gave the Guardian Council hope true regret was possible. Some Draconians might genuinely change if given the chance, but the decision of what to do with them was complicated by other discoveries. Ji-hoon Lee, now commander of humanity's first Guardian fleet, had found evidence of new threats emerging. In distant parts of the galaxy, 3 species have achieved space travel in the past year, he reported. 2 seem peaceful so far, but the third... What about the third? Hyunwoo asked. They've already started attacking their neighbors. Same pattern as the Draconians. Fear of resource depletion leading to aggression against other worlds. This was the test that would define humanity's role as guardians. They had the power to stop these new aggressors before they became a galactic threat, but using that power meant becoming judges of entire civilizations. We can't wait until they become like the Draconians, Yoonji argued. By then, innocent worlds will be destroyed. But we also can't just imprison species for crimes they haven't committed yet, Taemin countered. That makes us tyrants. The debate went on for weeks. In the end, humanity chose a middle path. They would intervene, but not with force. Instead, they would try something the ancient Guardians had rarely attempted: direct contact and guidance. First contact with the aggressive species, called the Taurani, was made by a joint human-Guardian diplomatic team. The Taurani were reptilian, similar to the Draconians, but smaller and more flexible in their thinking. "Your star is dying," Hyunwoo told their leaders through the translation system. "We understand your fear, but attacking other worlds is not the answer." "Easy words from species with healthy stars," the Taurani leader replied. "You do not face extinction." "Actually, we do," Yoonji said. "Our star will die too, eventually. All stars die. The key is learning to adapt rather than trying to take from others." The humans shared Guardian technology that could extend the life of dying stars or help species relocate to new worlds. They offered alternatives to conquest and war. Some Taurani leaders listened, others did not. In the end, humanity was forced to make their first imprisonment decision when a faction of Taurani ignored the peaceful alternatives and launched attacks on 3 neighboring worlds. The guilty ships were transported to a containment dimension, but the rest of their species was left free to choose their own path. "It's not perfect," Hyunwoo admitted to the Guardian Council. "Some will see us as threats to be feared rather than protectors to be trusted." "Perfection is not possible," the ancient Guardian replied. "We learned this over millions of years. The best you can do is try to minimize suffering while encouraging growth." As humanity settled into their new role, they made changes to the Guardian system. The ancient method of sleeping for thousands of years was replaced with active monitoring and engagement. Humans established contact with peaceful species, sharing knowledge and resources. They also created rehabilitation programs for imprisoned species. Rather than leaving them in isolation until they changed or broke, human psychologists worked with Guardian technology to provide therapy and education. The first group of reformed Draconians was released after 2 years of intensive rehabilitation. Only 20 individuals out of the original Armada, but it was a start. They were given a small world far from any others, where they could rebuild their civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Kethvar, the engineer who had shown the first signs of regret, became their leader. His last message to the Guardian Council was simple: "Thank you for giving us the chance to become better than what we were." Not all imprisoned species could be reformed. Some were too set in their destructive ways, but enough changed to give. Humanity hoped that their new approach was working. Yoonji Park stood in the observation deck of humanity's flagship, looking out at the stars. 5 years had passed since the Draconian Armada had disappeared. Earth was now the center of a galactic peacekeeping network, with human and Guardian teams monitoring dozens of developing civilizations. "Any regrets?" Hyunwoo asked, joining her at the viewport. "Every day," she admitted. "The responsibility is overwhelming. We're making decisions that affect billions of lives." But someone has to make those decisions, and I'd rather it be people who worry about getting it right than people who are certain they already know all the answers." Behind them, the bridge of the Guardian ship hummed with activity. Human and alien crew members worked together, monitoring communications from across the galaxy, ready to respond to threats or offer help to those who needed it. In the depths of space, ancient containment dimensions held the most dangerous species, some learning from their imprisonment, others remaining lost in hatred. New threats emerged regularly, but so did new allies and peaceful civilizations ready to join the galactic community. Humanity had accepted the role of galactic guardians, but they had changed what that role meant.